Before you ever start asking you, who is he? What does he bring to the table? Does he love me? Does he respect me? Does he value me? You first have to stop and ask yourself, do I know who I am? Because if you don't know who you are, then it doesn't matter who he is. If you don't have clarity about your identity, then every relationship will feel like a guessing game. You'll keep searching for confirmation from someone else when you should have already been grounded in the truth of who you were created to be. Think about it. When you don't know your worth, you'll settle for less. When you don't know your value, you'll accept disrespect as love. When you don't know your strength, you'll allow weakness to dominate the way you live. The foundation of any healthy connection is not what he says about you. It's what you say about yourself, and more importantly, what you believe about yourself deep down. Knowing who you are means you have already defined your standards before you invite someone into your life. It means you've already drawn the boundaries of how you should be treated. It means you have already embraced the truth that your value does not fluctuate based on someone else's opinion. You are steady, you are secure, you are centered. Without this clarity, you run the risk of making someone else the mirror of your identity instead of standing in your own reflection. Let's be real. Too many people walk into relationships expecting another person to complete them, when in reality, nobody can complete you. They can complement you, they can support you, they can add to your life, but they cannot define you. If you don't walk in knowing who you are, you'll start adjusting your identity to fit into theirs. You'll shapeshift into what you think they want instead of standing firm in who you truly are. And the tragedy of that is this: you'll gain attention, but lose authenticity. When you know who you are, you don't need validation every 5 minutes. You don't live for likes, comments, or constant reassurance. Instead, you become magnetic because confidence always draws respect. A woman who knows herself doesn't chase love. Love comes looking for her. A man looks at her and understands that she's not asking for a throne. She's already sitting on one. That's the difference between a relationship that's built on desperation and one that's built on dignity. Knowing yourself also means understanding your weaknesses as much as your strengths. It's not about pretending to be perfect. It's about being honest with yourself. What triggers you? What inspires you? What boundaries protect your peace? What values guide your decision? Without that clarity, you will constantly bend to please someone else. But when you're rooted in who you are, you can say a no without guilt, yes without fear, and enough without hesitation. It's like building a house. If the foundation is shaky, the whole structure collapses when the storm comes. But when the foundation is strong, it doesn't matter how strong the winds blow. The house still stands. Your identity is that foundation. Before you ever evaluate a man's ability to love, lead, and commit, you must first evaluate your own ability to stand, to know, and to value yourself. Because when you know who you are, you stop asking for permission to be valued. You walk in it naturally before you start questioning, is he loyal? Is he consistent? Is he faithful? Does he have vision? You need to pause and ask yourself, do I have clarity about me? Because if you enter into any relationship without being anchored in your own identity, you'll look to him for answers that only you can provide. The danger in this is that you begin to hand over the steering wheel of your life to someone who was never meant to drive it. And when you don't know who you are, anyone can take you for a ride. Knowing who you are means that you carry an internal compass that directs your choices and decisions. It means you don't let circumstances, emotions, or other people's opinions dictate your sense of self-worth. Too many people are living reactionary lives, reacting to how someone treats them, reacting to what someone says about them, reacting to the highs and lows of relationships, because they never built a strong core within themselves. And when you live without a core, you'll constantly crave external confirmation to feel steady. When you truly know who you are, you don't chase after identity in another person. You don't depend on a man to define you, validate you, or give you a title that you should already be walking in. You know your worth before he even speaks a word. You know your standards before he even approaches you. That's why confidence is so magnetic. It commands respect without demanding it. A man looks at a woman who knows herself and understands instantly that he cannot play games because she won't entertain them. There's something powerful about walking into a relationship with clarity. You already know what peace feels like, so you can recognize chaos when it shows up. You already know what respect looks like, so you don't confuse attention with affection. You already know what love should feel like, so you don't mistake manipulation for care. This is the advantage of self-awareness. You don't fall for counterfeits because you've already encountered the real. Another layer of knowing yourself is being honest about your needs, your calling, your purpose, and your vision. Too often, people adjust their goals to fit someone else's dream. But when you're grounded, you don't abandon your purpose to keep someone else comfortable. You don't shrink your light so they can feel tall. You don't mute your voice so theirs can be louder. You walk into any relationship carrying your mission, your passion, and your future, and anyone who joins you must align with it, not derail it. The truth is, if you don't know yourself, you'll always be tempted to become whatever he needs you to be. You'll shape yourself to fit into his world instead of standing firm in your own. And when you do that, you lose authenticity for the sake of approval. But when you know who you are, you bring the full, unedited version of yourself to the table. You don't apologize for your strength, you don't minimize your power, and you don't water down your standards. Knowing yourself is not arrogance, it's alignment. It's walking in the truth that your value isn't up for negotiation. It's rooted in your character, your principles, your integrity, and your self-respect. Before you ever ask him who, you must be able to boldly answer, "This is who I am." Because when you know yourself, you won't allow anyone to write a story for your life that you didn't authorize before you ask, does he respect me? Does he honor me? Does he cherish me? You need to pause and ask, do I respect myself? Do I honor myself? Do I honor myself? Do I cherish myself? Because the truth is, people learn how to treat you by watching how you treat yourself. If you don't value who you are, if you don't carry yourself with dignity, if you don't walk in self-respect, then you unintentionally give permission for others to devalue you. Knowing who you are is not just about identity. It's about identity expressed in action. It's not only about saying, I'm valuable, but living in a way that proves it. It's about the choices you make, the boundaries you set, the standards you uphold. When you truly know yourself, you no longer tolerate what diminishes you. You no longer settle for half love or half effort. You stand in the fullness of who you are, and your life becomes a reflection of that truth. Too many times, people run into relationships looking for a man to give them what they haven't even given themselves. They want him to respect them while they disrespect themselves. They want him to prioritize them while they neglect their own needs. They want him to speak life into them while their own inner dialogue is toxic. But the reality is this. If you haven't practiced self-respect, you won't even recognize it when someone offers it. You'll misinterpret attention as respect, when in reality, attention without intention is manipulation. When you know who you are, you elevate the level of the room when you walk in. You carry a presence that says, I am whole, I am complete, I am worthy. I am not because of a title, not because of a relationship status, not because someone else confirmed it, but because you already claimed it for yourself. That kind of self-awareness shifts the dynamic. It makes it clear that if a man wants access to your life, he must come with authenticity, with consistency, and with respect, because you won't accept anything less. And here's the key. Knowing yourself also requires knowing your limits. Self-awareness isn't only about strengths, it's about weaknesses too. It's about acknowledging your triggers, your vulnerabilities, and your blind spots, because when you understand them, you protect yourself from people who would exploit them. You're not asking him to be your healer, your savior, or your fixer because you've already taken responsibility for your own growth. You don't demand perfection from him, but you also don't allow dysfunction to disguise itself as love. Self-knowledge is power because it brings clarity to your vision. When you know your purpose, your standards, and your values, you see relationships as alignment, not validation. You stop asking, does he complete me? And instead ask, does he complement? You stop searching for someone to fill your emptiness because you're already full. You stop needing someone to define you because you already walk in definition. When you know who you are, your energy shifts. You stop begging for respect and start commanding it through your presence. You stop chasing people who don't see your worth and start attracting people who honor it naturally. A man who encounters a woman grounded in her identity immediately understands that he cannot play small around her. He must rise, he must respect, he must align, or he must step aside. This is why the work begins with you. Before you ever ask who he is, you must be able to answer with confidence, clarity, and conviction, "This is who I am." Because if you don't know who you are, you'll spend your life molding yourself into someone else's image instead of standing strong in your own before you start asking, is he confident? Is he strong? Is he secure in himself? You need to take a hard look in the mirror and ask, am I confident? Am I strong? Am I secure in myself? Because it's dangerous to demand from someone else what you haven't yet cultivated in yourself. If you're not rooted in your own identity, you'll keep looking for stability in another person, and that dependence will always make you vulnerable to disappointment. Knowing who you are means you've taken the time to build your own foundation before you invite anyone to stand on it. You've done the work of healing, of growing, of learning, of becoming. Too many people rush into relationships with unresolved wounds, expecting another person to bandage what they never treated. But relationships don't heal brokenness. They expose. If you don't know yourself, then every insecurity, every fear, every piece of baggage will eventually show up. And instead of standing firm, you'll start leaning on him to hold up pieces of you that you never secured on your own. When you know who you are, you don't compromise your identity just to be chosen. You don't water yourself down so someone else can feel comfortable. You don't minimize your greatness to protect his ego. Instead, you walk fully in your strength, unapologetically, boldly, completely. Because here's the truth. A man who is truly secure in himself will never be intimidated by a woman who is secure in herself. In fact, he will be drawn to it. But if you don't know your strength, you'll keep shrinking, hoping smallness will make you lovable. Confidence in who you are sets the standard for how others approach you. A woman who knows her worth doesn't have to scream it from the rooftops. It shows up in her posture, her decisions, her boundaries, her words. She doesn't beg for respect. She embodies it. She doesn't demand loyalty. Her presence commands it. And that kind of presence can only come from clarity within yourself. Knowing yourself also means identifying your values and living by them, not bending them to please someone else. If honesty matters to you, you don't compromise with lies. If respect matters to you, you don't excuse disrespect just because you're afraid of being alone. If growth matters to you, you don't settle for someone content with stagnation. When you're secure in your identity, you can walk away from what doesn't align, not because it doesn't look appealing, but because it doesn't match the truth of who you are. The greatest danger of not knowing yourself is that you will keep asking people to tell you who you are. And when you put your identity in someone else's hands, you give them the power to shape it, distort it, and even destroy it. But when you know yourself, no one can rewrite your story. You hold the pen. You own the script. You define the narrative. And because you've done the work of anchoring your identity, you don't have to fear being abandoned, rejected, or misunderstood. You already walk in wholeness. This is why the question always circles back. Do I know me? Because once you know yourself, you don't fall for illusions. You don't get blinded by charm. You don't get swept away by empty words. You measure everything against the truth of who you already are. And that truth becomes the filter that decides who has access to your heart, your mind, your time, and your future before you start asking, is he consistent? Is he reliable? Will he stand by me?
You must ask yourself first, am I consistent? Am I reliable? Do I stand by myself? Because the truth is, if you are not loyal to your own identity, you'll keep expecting someone else to do for you what you haven't done for yourself.
A man cannot anchor you in stability if you haven't first anchored yourself in self-awareness and self-trust. Knowing who you are is about developing a relationship with yourself before seeking a relationship with him. It's about recognizing your strengths, embracing your flaws, and cultivating your growth without waiting for someone else to motivate you. Too many times, people step into relationships empty, hoping the other person will fill them. But when you approach love from emptiness, you create pressure, you create dependency, you create imbalance. And when imbalance shows up, so does disappointment. Because you've handed someone a job description they were never meant to fulfill. When you know yourself, you set the foundation of loyalty to your own vision and calling. You are not easily swayed by distractions, flattery, or shallow promises. You've done the work to know what you stand for, so you can't be convinced to settle for less. Self-knowledge gives you discernment. It trains your eyes to see beyond charm, beyond appearance, beyond surface-level effort. You're not moved by what looks good temporarily because you've built your life on principles that last permanently. Consistency with yourself is one of the most overlooked qualities of identity. If you say you value respect, you must also live in a way that demands it. If you say you value peace, you must protect it by removing what disturbs it. If you say you value love, you must embody it in how you treat yourself daily. When you hold yourself accountable to your own standards, you create a lifestyle that naturally filters out people who cannot rise to them. A woman who is aligned with herself doesn't have to chase loyalty. Loyalty finds her because she has already been loyal to herself. Another part of knowing yourself is being able to articulate your vision clearly. Too often, people look for a man with direction while they themselves are lost. They want a leader without knowing where they want to go. But when you know who you already have a sense of where your life is headed. You carry goals, dreams, and assignments within you. And because you are rooted in that vision, you don't get sidetracked by relationships that don't align. You're not afraid to walk away from what doesn't match your future because you'd rather stay true to yourself than betray your purpose for temporary companionship. There is a power that comes with inner clarity. It shifts your standards from desperation to discernment. Instead of asking, will he choose me? You begin to ask, does he align with me? Instead of asking, does he see my worth? You ask, does he complement what I already know about my worth? That shift is everything because it moves you from being a seeker of validation to being a steward of your value. When you know who you are, your life becomes less about who he is and more about who you refuse to stop being. You stop bending to fit into someone else's story, and instead you invite someone who can walk with you in yours. You stop making decisions out of fear of being alone, and instead you make decisions out of the strength of being whole. Because before you can ever ask if he is consistent, loyal, or true, you must first establish that you are consistent, loyal, and true to yourself.